I spent 6 summers driving for the National Park Service in Olympic National Park, back when the shuttle system was still considered a pilot program to reduce roadside erosion along the Ho River Basin. You learn the rhythm of the route within a week. 19 miles of single-lane paved asphalt winding beneath western hemlocks, 12 designated stops, and 42 seats on the green Gillett bus. It was late October, the tail end of the wet season before the higher passes closed for winter. I was running the last inbound loop from the visitor center out to the Upper Ho trailhead. The rain had been steady since dawn, a thick gray drizzle that turned the forest floor into a sponge. I had 8 passengers on board, a family of 4 near the middle, 2 backpackers in damp Gore-Tex near the rear, and an elderly couple sitting right behind my driver's box. At 4:15 p.m., I pulled into the Sulduc Junction turnaround. The schedule called for a 5-minute layover before the final return leg. I set the air brakes, flipped the overhead cab light on, and stepped out into the rain to check the illuminated passenger count board mounted beside the shelter. The board was a standard stainless steel NPS fixture, hardwired into the solar array atop the shelter. It was designed to display a single digital number in high-contrast red LEDs, the current number of registered backcountry permits active in that specific zone, updating whenever hikers scanned their passes at the turnstile. When I walked up to it, the screen didn't show a number. It showed a prompt. Zone 4. Occupancy exceeded. Please advise passengers to dock vehicle. I stared at the display. The Sulduc zone didn't have a hard cap that late in the year. Winter permits were self-issue. I tapped the acrylic casing, thinking dampness had shorted the circuit board. The digital text blinked twice, clearing the message, and replaced it with a plain, illuminated tally, 4342. I looked back at my bus. It was parked 40 feet away, idling quietly, its interior bathed in warm amber light. Through the rain-streaked windows, I could clearly see my 8 passengers. The rest of the vinyl seats were empty. I walked back aboard, wiping my boots on the rubber step mat. "Everything all right, driver?" the old man behind me asked. His name was Arthur. He'd ridden my route 3 times that week. "Just a glitch on the junction board," I said, settling into the vinyl seat and pulling the lever to close the pneumatic doors. "We're heading back down now." I released the air brake. The airlines hissed, and we pulled out onto the narrow asphalt ribbon. 2 miles down the road, near the South Fork Bridge, the onboard transit dispatch console, a heavy Motorola radio unit bolted beneath the dash, clicked to life. The dispatch audio on those old systems didn't use digitized voices. It was a simple relay from the main office at Port Angeles. "Unit 14, confirm passenger load," the radio static crackled. I picked up the hand mic, keeping my eyes on the wet, narrow road ahead. "Unit 14, carrying 8, all clear." The radio stayed silent for several seconds. When the response came back, it wasn't the dispatcher's voice. It was the automated transit tone, the computerized chime used only when a vehicle breached weight distribution limits on the suspension sensors. "Chime, dispatch. Unit 14 reports 8. Vehicle sensors register 43. I glanced in the wide, convex rearview mirror suspended above my windshield. The overhead passenger lights reflected off the empty blue vinyl seats stretching toward the back. The family was quiet. The kids were asleep against the windows. The 2 backpackers were looking out into the dense canopy. 8 people. Exactly 8. "Unit 14, check your rear door sensor," I said into the mic, forcing my tone to remain flat. "Sensors must be wet." "Dispatch. Negative, Unit 14. Seat pressure plates active. Rows 1 through 21 occupied. Proceed to stop 6 for mandatory offload." A cold needle of anxiety poked through my chest. The Gillig buses didn't have seat pressure plates. They were standard commercial frames purchased secondhand from a regional transit authority in Oregon. They were rubber, steel, and foam. There were no wires in those seats. I eased my foot off the accelerator. The forest outside was darkening rapidly, the massive firs crowding so close to the shoulder that their lower branches scraped against the passenger side mirror with a dry, rhythmic shook. "Is there a problem?" Arthur asked, leaning forward slightly. His voice was lower now. He had noticed the radio traffic. No, sir, I lied. Just a sensor check. Stop 6 was the rainforest interpretive loop, a gravel pullout with a wooden shelter and a single pit toilet, deep in a section of old growth where the canopy blocked whatever daylight was left. It was 3 miles from the main park highway. As I rounded the final bend before stop 6, the headlights caught the wooden shelter. Standing beneath the overhang, drenched in the rain, were 2 uniformed Park Services employees holding orange traffic batons. My heart lifted slightly. Rangers. Real people. I pulled the shuttle to a stop, pulling the door valve. The pneumatic doors hissed open with a puff of warm air. The damp, mossy smell of the woods rushed into the bus. The 2 rangers didn't come aboard. They stood in the shelter, batons held vertically at their chests, staring straight at the windshield. Evening, I called out over the idling engine. Dispatch sent you out for the sensor test. Neither ranger moved. They were wearing standard-issue forest green park parkas, but as I looked closer, the yellow reflective stripping across their chests was wrong. It was sewn on vertically, running from their shoulders down to their belts. A pattern the National Park Service had never used. Neither wore a name tag. The ranger on the left raised a hand, pointing a single finger not at me, but toward the rear of the bus. Unit 14. The passenger radio speaker above my head clicked on, perfectly clear, without static. You are over capacity. Passengers must alight at designated points to maintain zone balance. Behind me, the family's youngest child started crying. It wasn't a sudden scream, it was a tired, terrified whimper. I turned in my seat. Every single seat in the bus was occupied. They weren't figures or ghosts. They were empty clothing, rain jackets, flannel shirts, muddy hiking boots, backpacks, filled out as if worn by human bodies, sitting perfectly upright in every row. The vinyl seats beneath them were compressed deep into their springs under heavy, solid weight. The air in the rear of the bus had turned freezing cold, fogging the interior side windows with thick, white condensation. The 2 backpackers in the back row were pressed flat against the rear exit door, their faces pale, staring in absolute terror at the occupied seats directly in front of them. "Get out," Arthur whispered behind me. His knuckles were white where he gripped the silver grab rail of my seat box. "Driver, open the doors." "No," I said, my voice shaking. "We don't get off here." I reached for the door lever to seal the bus, but it wouldn't budge. The mechanical valve was pinned in the open position by the pneumatic pressure system. "System notice," the radio speaker announced, its tone flat and clinical. "All load in progress. Seat weight retention at 100%. Do not depart until route equalization is complete." Outside, the 2 uniformed figures stepped out from the wooden shelter. They didn't walk toward the open front door. They walked toward the side of the vehicle, stepping up onto the exterior running boards, placing their hands flat against the cold glass of the passenger windows, looking inward. Their faces had no features, just smooth, pale, unbroken skin, stretched tightly over bone where eyes, noses, and mouths should have been. "Hold on," I yelled. I slammed the transmission selector into drive, stomped the accelerator to the floor, and tore the steering wheel to the left. The heavy Dillig bus roared, its rear tires spinning briefly on the wet gravel before catching the asphalt. The force jerked the door shut as we surged forward, tearing back onto the dark, winding park road. Behind us, the low, rhythmic thumping started. It was the sound of 42 pairs of boots shifting on the rubber floorboards. The pressure sensors on the dash began flashing in a rapid, cascading sequence from front to back. RO1, OCCPI queued. RO2, OCCPI, OCCPI, OCCPI. The weight in the back of the bus was dragging the rear bumper down. I could feel the front tires losing traction, skimming over the wet road surface as the sheer, impossible mass in the back seats tilted the bus backward. "Drive," Arthur screamed, pointing at the road. "Don't look back." I kept my foot pinned. The trees pulled into a blur of black walls on either side. The road markers flickered past. Mile 4, Mile 3, Mile 2. The weight kept increasing. The engine groaned, the RPMs dropping as the transmission struggled against a load equivalent to hundreds of people. The rear tires began to smoke, the smell of burning rubber filling the cabin. Up ahead, through the deluge, I saw the twin yellow steel posts of the park entrance gate. Beyond them lay State Route 101, civilization, streetlights, asphalt maintained by the State Department of Transportation rather than the Federal Service. Warning, unauthorized extrusion from Zone 4, the radio blared, no longer sound pattern like a human voice, but a sharp synthesized screech. Return vehicle to terminal. I didn't brake. I hit the wooden gate arm at 40 miles an hour. The fiberglass barrier shattered across the windshield in a spray of white fragments. The bus lurched violently over the rumble strip marking the park boundary, its tires hitting the wide, smooth lane of State Route 101. Instantly, the heavy dragging weight in the rear vanished. The engine screamed as the load lifted, the bus shooting forward onto the empty highway. I slammed on the brakes, bringing the heavy vehicle to a skidding halt on the paved shoulder beneath a high-pressure sodium street lamp. Silence descended, broken only by the hard, heavy idling of the diesel engine and the steady sweep of the windshield wipers. I sat there for a long time, my hands locked onto the steering wheel, my chest heaving. Slowly, I unbuckled my belt and stood up to check on the passengers. Arthur was sitting in his seat, breathing heavily, staring at the floorboards. The family was huddled together, the mother clutching her children. The two backpackers in the back were trembling, but unhurt. Every empty seat behind row 4 was completely dry. I left the National Park Service 2 weeks later. I moved back east, took an office job in a city, and haven't set foot on public land since. I still have my old route map tucked in a drawer in my desk. Sometimes I open it and look at the fine print at the bottom, the standard legal disclaimers about wildlife, trail safety, and park regulations. Right under the section detailing vehicle specifications, printed in the same official, clean sans serif font as the rest of the document, is a sentence I know wasn't there when I signed my employment contract. Notice, vehicle capacities within park boundaries are subject to real-time spatial balancing. Passengers who remain seated after capacity limits are reached will be integrated into official zone records. If you spend enough seasons as a lookout for the U.S. Forest Service, you learn to read the wind like a printout. Up in the glass box of Tower 4, sitting on an 8-foot timber frame on the ridge above the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness in Idaho, the wind was usually my only company. It was late August. The air smelled of baked pine needles and dry lightning, and the drought index had been sitting in the extreme range for 22 straight days. My job was simple. Sit behind the Osborne Firefinder, that heavy brass and steel sight mechanism mounted on a map table in the center of the cabin, and watch for white smoke against the blue-green expanse of lodgepole pine. At 600 on a Tuesday, the morning radio check came in on the high-frequency band. Tower 4, Station 11, barometer reading and visibility, over. Station 11, Tower 4. I set into the heavy hand mic, leaning over the clipboard where I logged the daily weather. Barometer 29.8, wind west-northwest at 4 knots, visibility infinite, no smokes. Copy 4. Be advised, Fire Crew Bravo 3 is conducting a controlled burn in Section 14 along the creek line today. Do not report light gray haze in Sector B. Copy Section 14, I said. I picked up my binoculars and trained them on Section 14, a narrow gulch 6 miles south-southwest. It was completely clear. No smoke, no crew vehicles, no staging gear. I turned to the Osborne Firefinder. The brass sight ring was aligned to my quadrant. I checked the map bolted beneath the glass sight ring. Section 14 was a blank, topographical valley etched with green contour lines. But stamped across the middle of Section 14 in clean red official Forest Service ink was a label that hadn't been on the map when I logged on yesterday. The ink was underneath the protective laminate, embedded directly into the government topographic paper. I'd used this exact map board for 4 seasons. I knew every elevation marker, every spring, every spur road. That red stamp had not existed 12 hours ago. At 9:30, the air changed. The wind didn't pick up, but the temperature inside the glass cabin dropped 12 degrees in 10 minutes. Outside, the valley was sunlit, bone dry, and completely motionless. I stepped to the northern window and looked down at the access road, a rough, single-lane dirt track that climbed 4 miles from the valley floor to the base of my tower. A standard Forest Service Dodge Ram pickup, painted agency green with the Shield logo on the door, was parked in the turnaround spot at the base of my stairs. I hadn't heard an engine. On the calm day, you can hear a truck grinding up the switchbacks 10 minutes before it clears the tree line. I opened the cab door, stepped out onto the narrow wooden catwalk, and leaned over the railing. "Hello?" I called down. The truck sat idling, a quiet, low vibration that I felt through the soles of my boots rather than heard. The driver's side door swung open. A man in a standard yellow Nomex fire shirt and green trousers stepped out. He didn't look up at the tower. He walked straight to the wooden board at the base of the tower stairs, where trail permits and daily fire danger signs were pinned. He unpinned the plastic arrow pointing to high fire danger, rotated it past extreme, and slotted it into a plain white space below the dial that had no text printed on it. "Hey!" I yelled down, my voice flat against the vast expanse of trees. "Who authorized a burn in 14? The man didn't answer. He turned toward the stairs and began to climb. His movement was strangely uniform. His knees didn't bend naturally. His legs swung forward in rigid sweeping arcs, his boots clicking rhythmically against the wooden treads. Clack, clack, clack. I stepped back inside the tower cabin and shut the door, latching the bronze handle. I picked up the radio mic. "Station 11, Tower 4. I have an unannounced ranger on site at the tower structure. Please confirm identity." The radio speaker had emitted static. It emitted a clear, low dial tone, like a landline telephone off the hook. "Station 11, field log update received. Tower 4 initiating containment protocol." "Dispatch, repeat," I said, my pulse picking up. "I didn't request containment." "Who is on my catwalk?" Apologetic. "What?" Through the glass windows of the cabin, I watched the man reach the top landing. He stood 6 inches from the glass door, looking down at his clipboard. He was wearing an official Forest Service ID badge clipped to his breast pocket. The laminate was clean and crisp, but where his photo should have been, there was only a small square of reflective silver foil. Beneath it, the printed name read, "Representative, Correction Unit." He didn't knock. He reached out with a gloved hand and attached an official metal plate directly over the wooden frame of my door, with 2 quick mechanical taps of a hand riveter. The plate was stainless steel, pre-engraved with thick black lettering. "Notice, this structure is located within fire perimeter, number 000. All personnel inside are classified as consumed. Do not open door." "What are you doing?" I slammed my hand against the glass. "I'm in here. Open a latch." The man didn't look at my face. His eyes remained locked on his clipboard. He checked a box on an official pink duplicate form, tore off the carbon copy, and slid it neatly under the weather stripping of the closed door. He turned around and began walking back down the stairs with the same precise, stiff gait. Clack, clack, clack. I grabbed the bronze door latch and pulled. It was locked from the outside. The steel plate he had riveted across the jamb covered the latch bolt completely. Panicking, I grabbed the steel crank for the north-facing casement windows. I swung the crank to open the glass pane to reach for the outer railing. The crank turned 3 times and stopped. Outside the glass, the view was no longer the sunlit valley of lodgepole pines. It was a wall of smooth, dark gray soil, laced with thin, white root systems, pressed directly against the exterior pane. I stumbled back, hitting the center map table. I ran to the south window. Dark gray soil, pressed flush against the glass. East window, soil. West window, soil. The cabin was entirely encased. The sunlight was gone, replaced by the dim, sickly amber light of the single 12-volt battery bulb hanging over the firefinder table. "Dispatch," I screamed into the radio mic, hammering the switch. "Dispatch. Tower 4 is collapsed. I'm trapped." The radio speaker clicked. The voice was calm, professional, and clear. The voice of a senior district dispatcher reading from an operational manual. "Tower 4, be advised. Fire perimeter number 000 was established at 600. Tower structure 4 was engulfed during early burn operations. Current status of operator. Remainder accounted for in soil core sample. I am alive," I shouted, kicking the heavy timber base of the map table. "I'm sitting right here." "Negative. Tower 4. The voice responded without emotion. "Log integrity must be maintained. Please review your station map for updated boundaries." I looked down at the Osborne firefinder. The brass sight ring had shifted on its own. It was pointed directly at the center of the map board, at section 14. The map paper under the laminate was no longer topographic. The green contour lines, the mountain names, and the river paths had vanished. In their place was a simple, hand-drawn floor plan of the cabin I was standing in. In the center of the drawing, a tiny, crisp red dot was printed. Beside the dot was a tiny printed label: "Burn material, removal schedule." I looked down at the pink carbon paper the ranger had slid beneath the door. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was a standard USDA Forest Service Form R6-7300, a land transfer receipt. Under item description, it didn't list lumber, fire equipment, or radio gear. It listed my name, my social security number, and my home address in Boise. Across the bottom, in the space reserved for final disposal method, someone had pressed an official rubber stamp in red ink, buried in place to prevent map discrepancy. I didn't try the radio again. I took the heavy brass sidearm off the firefinder table, turned to the south window, and shattered the double-paned insulated glass. I didn't hit soil. I hit cold, dry air. I scrambled out through the broken glass frame, tumbling onto the wooden catwalk. The sky above was wide, blue, and sunlit. The mountains stretched out to the horizon, exactly as they had been at dawn. The truck was gone from the driveway below. I didn't take my boots, my gear, or my logbook. I ran down the 4 miles of timber stairs and dirt switchbacks in my socks, stopping only when I reached the state highway 6 hours later. I never went back for my final paycheck. I never called the ranger station to report why I abandoned my post. 2 years later, I ordered a set of standard United States Geological Survey topographic maps for the Bitterroot region for a home framing project. I opened the quadrangle map for my old district. The ridge is marked as a smooth, empty contour line. And if you look very closely at the small key at the bottom of the map, where the symbols for highways, marshland, and ranger stations are explained, there is a single icon that doesn't appear on any other federal map in the country. A small black square with a diagonal line through it. The key defines it in one short line of plain text: structure removed from physical reality to align with official record.